For the last several months, there's been a lot of talk specifically in regards to whether or not MJF will join the Inner Circle. And there's a lot of people who don't want to see this happen. They don't think it should happen. They don't believe it's going to happen. But in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys why I think MJF should join the Inner Circle and why I think this would actually be the best thing for business, not just AEW, but this would also be really big for Chris Jericho. And more specifically, this would be incredibly big for MJF. Now, in pro wrestling, one of the biggest arguments that is being made right now is that WWE and AEW don't necessarily have, The Rock. They don't have a Stone Cold Steve Austin. They don't have a John Cena right now in their company. And, a lot of people could argue that Roman Reigns is kind of like the top guy in pro wrestling. And then, of course, Jon Moxley and Jericho being the top guys for AEW. And while these are all big arguments, we're looking at the future of pro wrestling. And right now, as it stands, the one guy who I think is going to carry the AEW flag for a very, very long time, it is, in fact, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And, I don't think his character, I don't think his persona, I don't think any of that works if he's in WWE. So specifically, when you look at AEW and what you're seeing with MJF, I think there is just something there that stands out really well. And MJF, to me, arguably will be one of the biggest assets to AEW 20 years down the line from now. So with that being said, why would we pair them together? Why would we put MJF and Chris Jericho together? Well, as you guys know, it's no secret Chris Jericho has done a lot to give back in the business. I mean, I think everybody knows that when he put over Fandango at WrestleMania. But nonetheless, Chris Jericho is always one of the guys putting over certain talent. And it's kind of nice to see what they've done with Chris Jericho in AEW because it is very different from what he's done in WWE. He also has the most protected finisher in AEW, which, if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to make a very bold prediction and say that eventually, one day, MJF will be the first guy to actually kick out of the Judas effect, which would be a massive deal because nobody has yet to kick out of that finisher. So why would we put MJF in the Inner Circle? Well, to me, I think it's a no-brainer. Eventually, the big storyline for AEW will have to be Chris Jericho versus MJF. Like, I think there has to be a massive main event moment between the two. And at some point, MJF is going to be the guy that goes over. And that's going to be because AEW obviously trusts MJF to carry that flag. But also, I think there's going to be some very, very cool stuff happening between him and Chris Jericho that will definitely put him over. So, how do we get there? Well, MJF joining the Inner Circle is how we get there. Yes, you expand on the group. Right now, you have Sammy Guevara focusing on Matt Hardy. Proud and Powerful could be in the mix for the tag team titles. Jake Hager is kind of like the bodyguard of the group. There's a lot of things that you can do within this group. Even though you're adding people to the group, everybody can kind of have their own focus. And me personally, I think what you have to do if you're AEW is kind of take some notes from WWE and how they handled Team Hell No. If you guys remember, WWE put Chris Kane and Daniel Bryan together, and they created a very cool storyline out of it. Two guys who don't really mesh well end up winning the tag team champions. That is something that can happen here. Chris Jericho and MJF teaming up as part of the Inner Circle long term. Give them a year, let them. That's the beautiful thing about AEW. In 1 year that they've been in business, a lot of things have been done long-term booking. And I like that. And I think you can actually do that here. So you pair Chris Jericho and MJF together. You put them together. Let them go for the tag team titles. Both guys have their own little issues with each other. Both of them have their own egos. We've seen a lot of this throughout time on AEW Dynamite. But at some point, Chris Jericho and MJF will have to split up. And that is when MJF gets that massive main event match on pay-per-view. And I think he does win that match. And I think that's the way of AEW putting over MJF. I think MJF and Chris Jericho together is really, really good for business. I think people will be intrigued to see how it works with MJF joining Chris Jericho, teaming up with Chris Jericho, and how that might cause some friction in the actual group. We're already starting to see signs of that with Sammy Guevara and some of the guys not being too happy about the potential idea of MJF joining the group. But nonetheless, I think that's kind of why this works out so well. MJF joining the Inner Circle is more of a business move than anything. Of course, with AEW, you know, if you are going to have some long-term planning, you know, this is a feud that could make a lot of sense, especially when crowds return, hopefully at full capacity some point next year. So MJF joining the Inner Circle, to me, just makes the most sense. It is something that I think should happen. But of course, MJF has to be the first guy to ever kick out of the Judas Effect. So you're going to protect this finisher for at least another year. And then when you build up that main event level match, MJF versus Chris Jericho, I think it's going to be very massive when it happens. And of course, that's the way you build new stars. That's the way you build new stars, in my opinion. So MJF is the guy who is the future of the company. This would cement that. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. MJF, Chris Jericho, it's very, very well possible. You know, we're going to see them have some stake together. You know, everything they're doing together is very good. There's a lot of chemistry there. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.